Al-Hassan.
Mr Chair, it is a pleasure to serve under your chairship. Over the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of working in a range of community pharmacies across the South West and elsewhere. And I want to thank the Honourable Member, the Member for Tiverton and Minehead, for the best birthday present I could ask for, an opportunity to talk about a passion that has defined my life and that I'm still proud to practice today. I started my journey in community pharmacy studying at that pearl of South West education, the University of Bath. More birthdays ago than I would care to admit. From there, I went on to work in community pharmacies across the region, from Bideford in North Devon to the heart of Bristol, and indeed even in Clevedon, a town I'm honoured to represent as the Member of Parliament. During my time working in village, town, city and even online pharmacies, I was witness to the irreplaceable value pharmacies and their teams provide to some of the most vulnerable in our society. But I'm sad to say that I also experienced many of the challenges the sector now faces, and indeed it was living with those challenges and seeing the unnecessary suffering that resulted from due to the decline of community pharmacy that prompted me to run for Parliament earlier this year. Over the past 2 decades working in community pharmacies across the South West, I have seen firsthand the consequences of pharmacy being neglected by the previous government for 14 years. Not least their bad Brexit deal, weakening our cooperation with our nearest neighbours. We have cut off the supply of pharmacists coming from Europe. We have greatly exacerbated our supply chain issues, resulting in medicine shortages, and we have contorted the MHRA into a role it was never designed for and has since failed to live up to. But undoubtedly, the worst thing the previous government did for our industry was freeze the funding settlement for 10 years, resulting in a 40% reduction in real terms. This, despite ever-growing demands on prescribing and the introduction of the new role for pharmacists with Pharmacy First, the Conservatives prescribe pharmacy a tough pill to swallow, and it's going to take years to undo the side effects. And that is why we must not waste any more time. We must stabilise the sector today with a fair funding settlement while we begin the arduous task of reforming the role of pharmacy and the role it plays in our healthcare system. Pharmacy First was a good step, but with only 7 conditions eligible, it falls far short of Wales's 27 and Scotland's 30, with the scheme in England fraught with issues, not least in payment. While the obvious priority to expand Pharmacy First and thus relieve pressure on GPs, we must first expand pharmacy's capacity, and that can only be done by finally implementing the hub and spoke legislation, which was inexplicably shelved in September without warning or explanation. Hub and spoke Model 1 would allow smaller independent community pharmacies to finally take advantage of the technologies larger chains have been utilising for decades, greatly increasing their efficiency and freeing up time previously spent on dispensing towards delivering clinical services to patients under an expanded Pharmacy First scheme. I'm eager to see this government avoid the mistakes made during the past 14 years that have brought our sector to a crisis point, and I thank the member for raising this debate and the Minister for his time listening to our concerns. We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to rewrite the story of pharmacy, which is a long and rich history of healthcare provision in this country, but which now faces an uncertain future, with some in the sector concerned we may not survive past 2039. The prescription for pharmacy is an immediate funding settlement for this year that would stabilise the sector with a sticking plaster, while we look at the longer-term changes the industry needs. Having been on the ground for the past 20 years, I'm here to tell you that pharmacy has cut every ounce of fat that can be cut. All that is left is bone. Without advancing the modernisation agenda, this is a sector that has no more efficiencies to make, and for that to happen, we need the government to commit to implementing the hub and spoke model to increase capacity and expanding Pharmacy First to utilise that capacity. Pharmacy has an important future role to play in relieving pressure of other parts of our healthcare system, but it can only play that role if we proactively engage with the sector rather than leaving it out in the cold for another 14 years.